Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew. Keith Johnson.
Howdy.
Alan Seiler.
I'm Dr. Allen, and I can bring out the best in you.
And Veronica Dashel.
Hi.
I love it. Perfect timing.
The off-screen hi.
Almost perfect timing.
Right.
All right,
hello,
and we're back.
Everybody.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Treksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you guys had something good to eat earlier.
We did. We made our little feast, so we've got enough food for like the next 4 days now.
I saw your spread. It looked delicious.
It is. It's pretty good.
And very filling.
But do you say so myself?
Yeah, for those in the know, I had chopped beef brisket, which they call sloppy joe at the place I got it, but it's like chopped beef brisket I grew up eating in Texas. So I had barbecue and barbecue baked beans and then the other stuff.
Awesome.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Well, do we have any news this week?
We have news this week. Paramount Plus has launched a holiday collection. So when you go to the home screen, on the top scroll, one of the features is, check out our holiday collection. And it is a collection of movies and television episodes that fit the holiday theme. And 3 Star Trek episodes have made the cut.
Really?
Would you like to know what they are?
Yes.
First one is Dagger of the Mind.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say let us guess. Dagger of the Mind, Charlie X?
No.
Maybe?
No.
Not Charlie X? But Charlie X is on
11:59.
Thanksgiving.
Well, this is Christmas. This is like the
Christmas.
season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dagger of the Mind, I mean, this is really dubious, but it makes it in basically because the word Christmas is mentioned.
Yeah. Well, there's a Helen Noel.
There is exactly. And
And there's a reference to a Christmas party.
Right. So there you go. That's it.
Christmas
and
in the
then
Madhouse.
next is Devil's Due from Next Generation, because the opening bit is a holodeck recreation of A Christmas Carol.
Wow, they are reaching.
Yeah.
And Tapestry, which of course has sort of a Christmas Carol-y theme about it. So there you go. That is,
I can see that one.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
They should have consulted us or our holiday episode from last year, because I think we had a better.
Yes.
11:59 should be on there. That's the most holiday episode there is.
Totally agreed. That one definitely should be.
Okay.
So other than that real stretch of, logic, we have the folks who do Star Trek wines is launching Star Trek Spirits, and they are releasing Romulan ale, whiskey, and vodka. And these are in very cool bottles.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to sampling them at some point.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Star Trek wines, and I guess Star Trek Spirits now, they're worth it just for the bottles. They have the beautiful reproductions of the bottles from the show.
Exactly. And these ones look really nice. Yeah, with a gold inlay, and it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
And if people want to see more of Star Trek wines, check out our special episode from last year that is on YouTube. And we'll be doing a special episode this year with some more Star Trek wines.
That's right.
Yes. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
I mean, anytime you want me to drink wine, I'm there.
we're going to drink and talk about Star Trek. It's going to be a great time.
Yeah. Awesome.
What's not to love?
Right.
If only we had the Romulan ale for tonight's episode.
I know, right?
So that's it. That's the news for the week. There's some other there's other stuff, but it's all like super spoilery, and I don't think we should, like Jonathan Frakes talking about Picard season 3 and some stuff about Discovery, and which Discovery is completed post-production. So that's a thing. But other than that, I don't want to get into like super spoilery stuff this early in the episode. So
yeah,
we'll have to talk about it later.
Okay. Well, Keith, do we have any This Week in Trek this week?
I do. Got a couple of things. I thought this is very interesting. As you might know, Gene Roddenberry wrote his first script for Enterprise, the outline of what will become the show Star Trek, on March 11th, 1964. But I read this, I found interesting. The first episode that became the pilot was The Cage. Now, on November 20th of that same year, a few months later, he submitted a revised script of The Cage in 1964. Do you have any idea what the name of the captain was in that revised script?
April.
No.
November.
No.
Was it Pike?
No. You have any idea, Charles?
Was it Johnson? Was it Smith? Was it?
No. This is fascinating. I didn't know this. On November 20th, 1964, a revised script of no, but getting there. A revised script of The Cage was submitted with the protagonist named Captain James Winter.
Okay.
Never heard that one before.
Yeah.
I've heard, as you said, Alan, I've heard April. I've heard James R. Kirk, which was in the first. James T. Kirk. I've never heard Captain James Winter before. And it's one of those things where if you had James Winter 50 years later, maybe we'd all be saying, God, who would name somebody James T. Kirk? Maybe James Winter would have made sense. But doesn't that sound strange?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, James Winter. Also in the 60s, I thought this was fascinating. November 20th, again, 1967, Matt Jeffries submitted the final approved design for the D7.
Wow.
Okay,
which is
cool.
Yeah, the Klingon battlecruiser.
Yes.
Wow.
This was the 24th sketch attempt he made before everybody could settle on what became the Klingon battlecruiser. 24 different sketches just for that one ship. I find that amazing.
2 per month.
Yeah, isn't that something else? But of course, back then, if you think about what they were doing, when we were still in the days of flying saucers and Buck Rogers type rocket ships, and of course, as we all know, the Enterprise itself is kind of a mashup of Buck Rogers type rocket ships and flying saucers.
Right.
So if you think about it, Mac Jeffries was really, really working far ahead of what was the standard for spaceships at that time. So that's a really big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a unique design for that time.
Absolutely. On November the 22nd, I think we all probably know this, 1996 was the premiere of First Contact in U.S. and Canada theaters.
Nice.
What most agree is the best of the TNG movies. It is also Jonathan Frakes' first directing effort at the movies as a film. He'd done a lot of television, but this was his movie directing debut, and I think he knocked it out of the park. It's a great it's a great show.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a great time. I mean, and using the Borg for the movie and villain works out so well because they're like a horde of zombies in space. You know, you can't go wrong with that.
Right.
And as Veronica says, if you want to hear more about that, go look for our past episode where we talk about the whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. And
Tonight's
one more
theme is pimping every one of our past episodes.
That's right.
One more on November 26, 1986 was the premiere in the US and Canada of The Voyage Home.
Oh.
One of the most popular of all Star Trek films, especially among non-Trek fans, because it's more lighthearted and it takes place in modern times at the time, and it's fun.
Yeah. It's great. It's great fish out of water. It fits in perfectly with those 80s movies. There was a whole string of those fish out of water movies in the 80s.
Right. And then the last thing, just 2 notable birthdays I had to mention, both on November 25th, 1921, Ricardo Montalban, and 1926, one Jeffrey Hunter were born.
Okay, nice.
Absolutely pivotal guys to the Star Trek world. End of story.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's this week in Trek history.
Well, great. Well, we'll take a quick break to promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show, but stay right there because we'll be right back with our discussion topic. And if you're watching with us live, we're going to continue on with our discussion topic right now, which is the Romulans. And Alan, you had suggested this one, so did you want to tee it up for us?
I have always been fascinated by the Romulans. I think they're one of the coolest races in Star Trek. And when they popped up last week at the end of the last week's Prodigy episode, I was like, now is my time. Now is the time that we delve into the Romulans. I just find them really, really interesting. Their culture is super interesting. They're political structure. You know, I just think they're a great race, and I'm very much looking forward to talking about it. So I want to know from each of you, what's your overall impression of the Romulans? Where do they sit in the Star Trek canon of villains, quote unquote villains?
I love the Romulans because, one, they're Vulcans. They come from the same root as the Vulcans. They are Vulcans who left. I love the fact that they're cousins of the Vulcans.
Yep.
And they show you what the Vulcans would have been had the Vulcans not really glommed onto logic.
Yep.
One of the things I've always found so interesting in Star Trek, and I've always found this very, very interesting, even, for example, in the Tonight Show with the Prodigy, and we'll spoil that later, but there's an indication that because a certain person has Vulcan DNA, that they are logical. Vulcans are not logical by nature. Vulcans are savage by nature. And with the Romulans, you see, like with the Klingons, a race that controls their savagery. They channel it into empire and so forth. They are simultaneously kind of scary, savage, and simultaneously kind of cool. And I love them for that. They're cool and potentially violent, and then they're kind of Vulcans, but they're not. I've always loved the Romulans, and they have some of the most memorable characters around, including the Romulan commander from the Enterprise incident, whom I just love. And I can never get enough Romulans. Yeah, I never get enough of them.
Yeah, I mean, they were set up so well from the start because, like you said, they're offshoots of the Vulcans. So immediately in Balance of Terror, you have that that paranoia element to it,
right?
And not trusting Spock because he looks like the enemy.
Yes.
And that sort of tension runs through the Romulans. I mean, you saw it from Balance of Terror, and then all the way up to their story becomes so fascinating, all the way up to Discovery, where you found that they've come home to Navarre and they're living with the Vulcans again. You know, I think it's cool that they're able to bring that storyline full circle like that. You know,
that's true.
What do you think, Veronica?
I mean, for me, the Romulans have always just been kind of they're their bad guy and not an in your face bad guy so much as some of the others. So they've always been kind of mysterious to me.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what makes them so menacing, I guess. Because you don't know that much about them.
Exactly. I think a lot of their societal structure is a mystery to us. And I think when you get those little glimpses into it, like some of the stuff that we saw in the first season of Picard, just opens that door a little bit more. And you know, I think it's fascinating every single time we get those little glimpses.
Yeah, absolutely. And Veronica, you were watching a Romulan episode just this week.
I was.
Yeah. Did you like it?
Yeah, I don't remember what episode it was.
The
or
Enemy.
What was going on. Enemy. Oh, right. Yeah.
With Geordi?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
Man, that's a good one.
That was really interesting.
You'd never seen it before, is that right?
I had. If I have, I do not remember having seen it.
I'm so envious that you can just watch The Enemy and you've never seen it before. Like, what a great episode.
Yeah.
So, like, you didn't know the whole time whether Worf was going to save that Romulan's life or not?
I was pretty sure he was not.
Okay.
I had forgotten that Worf's parents were killed by Romulans. But when that came up, and as soon as I knew they were testing for people, I was like, oh, Worf's going to be the only match, obviously. And I knew he wasn't going to give the blood. But when he talked to the Romulan and the Romulan was like, I would rather die than have your filthy blood. I was like, oh, now he's going to do it just to spite him.
Right.
Have you ever seen... Veronica, have you ever seen somebody in Alan so obviously get the result they wanted? To your point, what you just said, Alan, Worf goes up to the dude's bed and says, hey, dude, I got something that you need, you dog, basically. I mean, what was the guy going to say? I mean, seriously. And then the guy goes, like you said, the guy says, I'd rather die. And Worf's like, oh, you heard him. You heard him.
Right. Exactly.
Fine by me.
And how is Worf the only match? I mean, it's good storytelling, but come on.
Yeah, that was a contrivance because there is one. They've tried to do stuff like that before. There is 100% no way that a Klingon would be a closer match to a Vulcan than a Romulan. I don't care how far or how long the Romulans have been away from Vulcans.
Right.
So they kind of set that up. Although it was kind of gutsy at the time of Next Generation to let a member of the crew be so incredibly, what's the word, selfish, full of hate, motivated by hate, because he was motivated by hate. And Riker even tried to talk to him, like, when do you end the cycle? And Worf's like, nah, he's going to die. And I love it when Picard is confronting our recurring friend Tomalak, and Tomalak says, "Where is he?" And Picard just goes, "He's dead," and that's kind of it.
Right. I love that scene where Picard is. I mean, he goes to Worf and he said, "I won't order you." Yeah. And he literally says, "Like, I'm begging." Yeah. And I mean, how do you still say no to that? Like, I think that was such a surprising thing for the day, because the way Star Trek stories go and way just television stories went back then. Yeah, he's going to come around in the end, you know, but he doesn't come around in the end.
Yeah,
I'm really glad that no one ordered him to, because that's something you can't do legally. You can't force someone to give.
Yeah, you have bodily autonomy.
Yeah, so I'm glad that it was never I'm going to order you to.
Right. Yeah.
Just as, I guess, ethically, Beverly could not have used Worf's blood if the Romulan had kept insisting he didn't want Worf's blood, even if Worf had agreed to do so, right?
That's a good point. She might have Worf's blood in cold storage somewhere. Just being a member of the crew, you know?
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So Romulans.
Well, I did a little poll this week.
Yes.
We want to get into the poll.
Let's see.
Asking people what their favorite Romulan episodes are, and there you could pick more, and you could pick more. You could pick more than one, and you could add to the list. But the results were this: number one, with 40% of the vote, was Balance of Terror.
Of course.
Number two, with 16% of the vote, was the Enterprise incident.
Okay, another good one.
Number three, with 12% of the vote, was In the Pale Moonlight.
Woo!
And then number four, with 8% of the vote, was Face of the Enemy.
That's the one with Troy goes undercover?
That's the one with Troy goes undercover.
That's the one that I added afterward, because
that's a surprisingly underrated good episode.
We're going to talk about that one. Don't you worry.
That's an excellent episode.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's striking that, I mean, I guess it's not surprising, but the Balance of Terror still sort of leads the pack because it's just a classic.
It is a classic.
That's one of those. I mean, they were just playing off that episode on Strange New Worlds this past year, or this year, just a few months ago. You know, basically doing a little remake of that episode because it's great.
Yeah, Charles. I listened to a film podcast where they do things like this, where they're always doing polls, and they do a thing called the penalty box, where they take movies that would always win and put them in the penalty box. So they'll take stuff like The Godfather and Wizard of Oz and things like Balance of Terror, The Doomsday Machine. There's so much stuff in the original series. It's always going to be there. Isn't that amazing? Always going to be there.
Yeah. It's classic episodes.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, it created the Romulans so well with, I mean, I think even better than Errand of Mercy did for the Klingons, because the Klingons were not fully formed in Errand of Mercy.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
But, I mean, the Romulans in Balance of Terror are basically the Romulans as they are now.
Right.
Well, they're so ultimately cool. They've got the bird of prey on the ship. They've got the Vulcan look, but they have more emotion than the Vulcan. So in some ways you can probably relate to them more. They've got the kind of weird Roman, we call them Romulans, Romulus and Remus, which is so weird. But they've got this kind of cool thing, like in that Balance of Terror, Odysseus even talks about the Praetor's proudest starship. And they have those things. They have senators and praetors and all these other military and political divisions from ancient Rome. It just makes them come off as really cool.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But also, as we've talked about before, they were written in a way that made sense. You understood who they are.
Right.
You know, the commander is tired of war. He's he's been around the block enough that he just wants off. He's ready to be done, but he's still going to do his duty, and he's still going to, man, it's so good.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have that whole angle on the Enterprise of that prejudice, that racism against Spock. God, what a brilliant episode that is.
Yeah. And it's one of those that has an A story, a B story, a C story, a D story, but they all weave together so well. It's just a story.
It's just a story. Exactly. Yeah. And I think a lot of the TOS episodes did that. You know, it's not broken up the way modern television storytelling is done.
Right.
Yeah, and they had some of the best subtle writing because, Alan, when you were talking about the prejudice, I remember when Kirk was saying they need to code it, and Styles kind of mutters, "Give it to Spock." He said, "What'd you say?" "Nothing, sir. Let's have it." And I love the way he muttered it under his breath. It sounded so realistic. If it was like a blink and you don't catch it, then Kirk makes him. Then when Kirk says, basically, are you complimenting Spock on his decoding ability? I don't know that. And the famous Kirk grabs him and swings that chair around. Awesome scene.
Yes. Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, coming in at second place was the Enterprise incident, which is another great episode.
Oh my gosh.
I think the really clever thing about the Enterprise is it really swaps Kirk and Spock's roles. You got Spock is wooing the lady to distract her while Kirk is doing the technical thing, you know?
That is my favorite aspect of the episode.
Right.
Forgetting how good the Romulans are in that episode, and especially
be right back, guys. I got
Romulan,
my alarm I gotta get.
Okay.
Especially the Romulan commander is so good in that episode. And but other than that, I think that the whole role reversal of Spock and Kirk is genius. Yeah, it throws the audience off in exactly the same way that they're trying to throw the Romulans off. Brilliant.
Yep. And I mean, it's sorry, I got distracted by the comments for a second. Yeah, and I think that it's fun to have Kirk in the pointed ears. They get some humor out of that. Which, you know, it's sorry.
We're so popular, we got a bot.
Yeah, we got a bot.
They have been blocked.
Oh, good.
Because they're so distracting for Charles.
Oh, hey, it was in my corner of my eye there.
I know. And who doesn't want hot girls? Come on.
I mean, right. I mean, it's just a fun episode, and they do such a great job of giving Spock a little more. You know, you get Spock in that role where you get a little. I mean, it feels like there really was some romantic interest between him and the Romulan commander, even though he was following his mission. I feel like those two had real chemistry.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I don't remember that episode well enough to comment.
Okay.
Veronica.
I mean, I'll watch it. And this one, I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember watching this. But the one with Geordi and the Romulans, I had no memory of it all whatsoever. Yeah. I may have seen it.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Well, let's go ahead and get to Face of the Enemy then. That was that came in at number 4, but we'll wait for Keith to come back for
what was 3?
3 was In the Pale Moonlight. Which Keith had added to the poll. So let's go for Face of the Enemy.
Absolutely. Okay, so there's a lot that I love about that episode. First of all, everybody knows I'm a big Troy fan, and anytime that Troy is featured, and she got like one feature episode per season, so you know, as long as it was a good one, I was happy. But this one takes Troy and puts her in a completely unfamiliar role for her, and she just moves in and takes control of the situation, and I love it so much. But the thing that is so great about it is Carolyn Seymour as the Romulan commander. And I think that she is like Joanne Linville level Romulan commander.
Oh, yeah.
And Joanne Linville is from Enterprise Incident. And I think that those two characters are so symbolic of Romulan, you know, crew structure. You know, I think that both of them are phenomenal characters, and I love the commanding nature of them. And Carolyn Seymour, it is a crime against all Star Trek fans that they never had her back in that role. They had her back for other things, but never had her back in that role because she was brilliant. But that whole espionage angle was so good, and all that stuff. I'm the only one here now.
We're still here. Veronica just unplugged our camera with her legs.
Oh, Veronica.
How did I do that?
Go ahead and keep talking.
Oh, I will. Where was I? Okay, so that whole espionage angle with them smuggling out. Oh, hey, new camera angle. Now, if you can just switch them, depending on who's doing the talking, that would be amazing. Our production values are increasing.
Yep.
All right. Matt Sweatman says, I find it interesting that with a season cliffhanger and another mid-season two-parter featuring Romulans. Face of the Enemy was the most popular TNG Romulan episode in the poll. And it being sort of a later entry too. I didn't think it would gain that much traction, but I'm super excited that it did.
Yeah. Well, it's really good. And I think really the most fascinating thing about it to me is the tension between the regular Romulan military and the Tal Shiar.
Exactly. That's what I was talking about earlier, when you get those little glimpses of Romulan structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just makes it feel like a not a less one-dimensional race. You know, that there's different groups, they don't like each other, they have different agendas. You know, and usually you get this sort of one size fits all to alien species, you know.
Totally.
But I love it when you start seeing the more facets, and I think it's fascinating watching Troy have to bluff her way through this situation, not having a full understanding of even what's going on.
Right.
And Charles, I think you make a good point, because like in real life history, that's always been the thing. If you study Nazi Germany, you had the actual army whose name is escaping me right now, the German name for the actual army, but it was the secret police, the SS, that became in some ways the bigger threat, and that ultimately started taking over much of the power. And if you look at other countries and even other races in Star Trek, like the Cardassians, the secret police and the intelligence services are often the enemy of the military in a lot of ways, because so many, or Section 31, because the military at least kind of sort of says, we're fighting openly and patriotically for our country. You guys are full of secrets and experiments and torture and all this kind of stuff. And I find it interesting that there's that tension in almost every race where that's brought up.
Yeah. And I think it works really well in Face of the Enemy. And it was such a cool, I mean, just the cliffhanger was so cool watching that for the first time. And it's like, Troy's a Romulan, you know, it's wild.
It is. I love it.
And also, I think Matt, hey Matt, I think a good response to what you're saying as well is this was when you finally saw one of the very few episodes where Troy had some meat to do that didn't have to do with her being somebody's lover or something like that.
Right.
This was this post Jellicoe?
I don't know.
I don't know, but I know that Marina Sirtis said that she loved it because later on, I think in the episode where the Romulan ship and remember the one with the Romulan ship and the Enterprise are locked in like a time stasis, and Troy loved that episode because she was actually able to say that Romulan engines use a singularity, basically a mini black hole, and she loved it because it was this and Face the Enemy. These were episodes she said she was able to act, and she was able to be intelligent, and she was able to be tough, and she had no problems with being sexy, but she was tired of being just sexy Troy, and so she loved episodes like this for this reason.
I remember hearing an interview many years ago with Terry Farrell talking about her role on DS9, and she said that the only reason that they had roles for Dax and for Kira, the way that they did on that show, is because Marina Sirtis and Gates McFadden would not stop fighting for meaty roles for the women. Wow. And that's how you got things like Face of the Enemy. You got these things where they weren't, because both of them were caretakers. You had Tasha, who was a security officer, but they nixed her before season 1 was even over. So you only had 2 women caretaker roles left on that ship, and they kept asking for more meaty roles, and that's how you end up with such good parts for women on DS9. And Matt also says Face of the Enemy was 3 episodes after Chain of Command, and I was just going to say the same thing. It was midway through season 6, so it is post Jellicoe.
So you got to thank Jellicoe, because Marina Sirtis says as soon as she got out of the dresses and put on a real uniform, her IQ level went up on the show, which I love. I think too, talking about the Romulans, I was thinking about what we were talking about, why people like the Romulans. There's so many people have talked about, we've done the thing where if you were another race in Star Trek universe other than human, what would you be? And a lot of people like the Vulcans, but a lot of people don't like the discipline of logic with the Vulcans. A lot of people wouldn't like to be that. The Romulans give you what you think would be a midway between human and a midway between Vulcan, because the Romulans do have emotions. I'm never clear in the regular Star Trek universe how many of the powers of the Vulcans did the Romulans retain. Do they still retain well, they have the lifespan. Do they still have the super strength and all the other physical things and the telepathic abilities of the Vulcans because they're still Vulcans? Or no? I can never tell.
The first time I remember seeing Vulcans with Romulans with Vulcan strength was in the 2009 movie. Before that, I don't think they were ever portrayed as having that level of strength. Or, I mean, you look at like when Kirk fought Spock, and Spock about kill him, but then Kirk beams over to a Romulan ship, and he's just punching people left and right. You know, like there's no contest. You know,
that's a good point.
In the old Best of Trek collection, there was a fan essay about this very thing, where the fan theory was what Sargon's people, the way they had influenced Vulcan prehistory, was by genetically modifying the Vulcans and not the Romulans, and that's what led to the conflicts and for the Romulans leaving, which is a really fascinating essay.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but it was just putting it together from pieces from what was in the show, and I wish they would have done something like that with the show, because that makes it sort of an additional wrinkle in the Vulcan Romulan relationship. If all of a sudden you had these Vulcan super beings on the planet, and then eventually the Romulans flee, you know.
Interesting. I've never seen that. I've never heard that. I've heard so many angles on it. There was one I read in one of the books years ago that Orions attacked Vulcan and that they defeated them. And then the Romulans, who felt that the way of the warrior or being more aggressive and emotional was the future, took those Orion ships and left Vulcan because they couldn't get along with the Vulcans, who still wanted to hold on to logic. I'm not quite sure when the split occurred, but yeah, I just find that a very interesting. I think because Vulcan in TNG, and I want to say it was the Neutral Zone episode, when Troy was giving Picard a summary and a synopsis of the Romulans, one of the things she said was the Romulans were capable of being incredibly gentle one moment and savage the next. Which is what Vulcans can't do anymore because they've cut off all that emotion. So I think a lot of people like Vulcans because Vulcans can be, Romulans can be as cool as Spock, and then they can be kind of savage in a way you like, which is, Vreenak with the famous "it's a fake," with just the emotion holding up the little thing like that.
Well, speaking of which, I mean that episode was number 3 on our poll.
Yeah,
which I thought was interesting. I didn't even include it the first time around because
I wouldn't have thought
to
include it either.
Episode, but Keith, you did. So why In the Pale Moonlight for a Romulan episode?
I like In the Pale Moonlight, and it's a Romulan episode because In the Pale Moonlight, like that whole arc of Deep Space Nine, was not just a military tale; it was also a political tale. And what we were seeing here was the Federation. Well, the Federation, because the Federation Council approved Cisco's plan. They were desperate to bring the Romulans in, but it's like a real war thing. We're dealing with this right now where Russia is invading Ukraine. And not to get too much into politics, but there's some divisions in this country about how much we support the Ukrainians. There's other countries around the world that are kind of like, hey, it doesn't affect us. And what I like about this, it shows one thing Romulans have in common with Vulcans is they can be haughty and arrogant to a level that makes you want to hit them. And when Senator Vreenak, who's a Romulan, and the Romulans are sitting back and going, okay, the Klingons and the Federation are going to fall, and then we're going to rule over what's left. And they're incredibly arrogant. And the Federation is trying to find a way politically to bring the Romulans in because they can't bring them in militarily. And so I love this. And when Vreenak shows up, he literally says something to the effect of, I forget what he said, something to the effect of it would be impossible for his opinion of the Federation to fall any further than it's already fallen. And he's so arrogant and he has so much influence because one thinks that if he used his political power in the Senate, he might be able to get Romulus to turn and join, or at least look at it more. So I like that the political aspects and looking at the Romulans. And then, of course, he's in some ways like a stereotypical Romulan because he's arrogant beyond belief. And then he has that great outburst, the famous, "it's a fake." And so it's a little slice of the political world with the Romulans at that time.
Yeah. And noteworthy too, because I mean, the Romulans joining the Dominion War was huge, not only for the Federation, but for, Romulans as well. I mean, that's a big turn for them. Now, the Romulans are the types that they're happy to just, these two great powers are all warring each other. We'll just sit back and when they've killed each other, we'll move in. We'll stay out of it and let you guys kill each other.
Yeah.
So I mean, but it's a pretty big move getting the Romulans to join the war against the Dominion, and it's so cool seeing like the Daradex class ships like join in the battles and things. Like all fighting on the same side as the Federation. It was just really cool seeing those big Alpha Quadrant races or Alpha and Beta Quadrant races coming together as a big alliance.
Yeah, and as you said, Charles, one of the reasons I like this is because, as you say, one thing consistently shown about the Romulans throughout all the Star Trek shows is they're schemers and they're plotters, and they will, unlike the Klingons, who on the surface at least always say they want to go in. The Klingons like to make fun of subterfuge and deal making, even though they do it. The Romulans are sneaky. And they don't see it in ways that even we would see. It's Gene Roddenberry famously refused to let the Federation ever adapt or adopt full cloaking technology because he said it was dishonorable, basically, and it's not just something they would do. The Romulans obviously don't have any problems with that. So, like you said, in that episode in the Pale Moonlight, I like the fact that they're just sitting back. And in some ways, it's ironic. Sisko actually, even though what he did is morally questionable, he is actually pushing the Romulans to what is better for them, because they are weighing their survival and they think sitting it out was better. But I kind of think that not sitting it out probably in the long run would have hurt them. The Dominion could not have been allowed to gain a foothold. And so it's interesting that that's what they're all about. They're all about subterfuge. They're all about plotting. There's even insults where you'll see a Klingon sometimes hurl at another Klingon, "You plot like a Romulan." I mean, and that's like a serious insult.
Yep.
Matt Sweatman. Matt Sweatman says this talk of DS9 and in their Star Trek rewatch, they're mired in the second season of Enterprise. Hey, just keep watching, man, because you got to get to season 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I was going to say that. I mean, I like that on Lower Decks and on Prodigy, they've been able to sort of turn the clock back, and they're going back to the Romulans sort of as we left them at the end of DS9.
True.
I mean,
yes,
with 2009 and then Picard, I sort of felt like we'd left those Romulans behind. You know what I mean? But it's cool that we've had these animated shows now that are sort of in that gap where you can just, the Romulan neutral zone's still there and the Romulans are still there. And you know what I mean? Like you can just sort of have those ships show back up, and it doesn't mess anything up. The storyline that's going forward. And I like the sort of Romulan refugee storyline. I'd love to get back to that at some point. I love the knowledge that, by the 32nd century, they make it back. They're back on Vulcan or Nivar living together. I think I just think it's cool. And I love that we're able to play in different timelines with them now.
Agreed. That's the strongest thing that's going on with the Star Trek franchise right now, with all these Paramount Plus shows being set at different points in the timeline, is that you get all these different perspectives and you can tell all these different kinds of stories without like negating, if we want to paint the Romulans this way in Discovery, we don't have to have some contrivance to tell this other kind of story. We'll just do it in Lower Decks, or we'll do it in Prodigy, because that's the time in which that storyline can be told. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I thought one Romulan among our Romulans, I'm not going to say it was a disappointment, it was a complete surprise, but I guess it makes sense. In the Next Generation, when they brought back Denise Crosby as her own daughter, that whole thing, and I'm sorry, but that ridiculous plot of the Romulans kind of conquer Vulcan with like 3 ships. The thing that surprised me was, do you remember the Praetor at that time? He was this kind of little dude who was like a functionary. You remember he was a small dude. He wasn't aggressive. He was just like an administrator, but he was the Praetor. And I guess I'm still thinking about shows like Bread and Circuses or Ancient Rome, where you assume the leader killed his way to the top in in single combat. And that Praetor came off as just like a functionary administrator, kind of like a little weasel who probably killed people, on the sly. And I remember I was being shocked, like, that's not what a Praetor is supposed to look like. He's supposed to be like some cool dude, like Apollo. But I found that very interesting, because that means that system is still going forward. It's got the old ancient foundations, but it's still going forward. And maybe when you're Praetor at that point, maybe you just scheme your way to the top. Maybe you don't kill your way to the top.
Yeah. I mean, that seems like a Romulan thing to do, is scheme your way to the top and have others do the dirty work for you.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of the Romulans, they're back this week. So we want to transition over to talking about the latest episode of Star Trek Prodigy.
Heck yeah.
Ooh, there is so much to talk about this week.
Yeah, there is.
You'll give us a spoiler alert, Veronica?
All right. Whoop, whoop. Spoiler alert. Whoop, whoop.
And that's spoilers for Star Trek Prodigy Masquerade, which aired just here today. And was, like you say, chocked full of stuff.
Oh my
Holy
gosh.
cow. What
Guys,
an
I'm gonna warn you,
episode.
guys, I'm going to warn you, my camera may go out. If it does, I know it. I'm working on it.
Okay. So where do we want to start? I mean, the first thing that jumped out at me was that we got another space elevator, another space jump.
Yeah.
Yes.
Twice
I
in a
did
year
notice.
we've had space elevator, space jumps.
I was thinking the same thing.
I wrote with a chuckle, Charles. I wrote down with a chuckle. They said that because of the ion storms and stuff, the space elevator was better than a ship. I don't think I agree with that. I think I'd rather take my chance at a warp-driven starship through a storm than a freaking 3-mile tower that's just sticking up out of the ground. But I still thought it was cool.
I would love to go in a space elevator, though.
Yeah, me too.
I'll be first in line.
Heck yeah.
With
Heck
my own
yes.
spacesuit while I'm riding it, not without a spacesuit.
Right.
It's going to break.
Well, they have space helmets inside there for an emergency if the Romulans shoot out your windows.
Yes, helmets. I really feel like that's not going to help if you're in the vacuum of space and your skin is exposed to space.
Thank you, Veronica. That's why I take a ship.
Stuff can happen on a ship too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Elaine says that she loves the space elevator, not that she would want to ride on it.
I was just disappointed there was no music in there on the space elevator. You think
Yes. Wait. Hold on. We can have some.
space elevator music. There we go.
We're on the space elevator. We're going down to the planet now.
3 miles to ground.
Oh my
Reminds
gosh.
me of the Kill Bill thing where she was going to kill people. She kept getting on the elevator and hearing elevator music.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was a cool episode. They got some big revelations in this episode.
Woo.
I mean,
Yeah.
probably the
Holy-
biggest one I would think is Dow.
Yeah.
That this is going to be an ongoing storyline, that he's
Yes.
not just from a planet somewhere. He's probably his genetically human with modifications of other species sort of mixed in.
Yeah. That's unexpected.
Yeah, I thought that was a
I
cool
didn't see
twist.
that coming.
No. Yeah,
Um,
and I like the genetic scientist lady. I like that she's outside Federation space. Made me think
Mhm.
maybe like Bashir's parents might have gone to this planet. You know, I was waiting for them to drop some kind of line about that. You know, like they could have traveled here and,
That's true.
and seen Dr. Was it Jogo, something like that.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
but remember they conspired to put a Sung in there again, at least by name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My
was like,
God,
are
are
you-
Sung's responsible for everything?
I was
Yes.
like, are you flipping kidding me that we have to have a Sung, and I'm doing my best to not cuss, Sung in this stupid show too. I was a little aggravated with it.
At least it was just a reference. At least he didn't.
Right.
Spiner didn't step out, which I mean,
Je-
I actually wouldn't care if Spiner had stepped out.
He will be there. I guarantee you he is going to show up at some point because they're going to find a way to get Dial to his creator to figure out why he was created or whatever. It's
But
going to happen.
they were students of, not, it wasn't,
Yeah.
she didn't say that they were actually Sung's work.
Yeah, so
So-
it could be. I mean, but that could mean that it's the current Sung, or it could mean that it was just somebody who worked with Eric Sung, who passed that knowledge down. Like, we don't know yet. I mean, they've
Yeah,
left
yeah.
themselves open, but it's interesting. I mean, basically now that there's no planet of dolls out there. Like, there's no
Right.
home for him to get to. It's going to be a matter of figuring out who created him and why,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
It
all
is.
the
Yeah,
all the different races that were popping out of him for lack
that was
of a better
great.
word.
Yeah,
It was making me try and figure out like exactly which races,
Mhm.
because she mentioned some of them, but she mentioned there was like 27
Mhm.
different races with dormant genes in there, or
Yeah.
at least dormant genes.
well, for sure there was Andorian, Klingon, Tellarite, Vulcan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, he mentioned that he thought a third arm was getting ready to grow out of him.
maybe a little
Idoan.
Idoan. Yep.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And then we've
good
said
call.
before that he looks like Neelix.
He's got a little Neelixy to him. Yeah, I can see that in the spots. I thought that the other guy looked like Neelix, or looked like a Talaxian, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting though that, I mean, it opens up a new storyline for Dahl.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's one of those steps along the mystery that creates a new mystery that gives you somewhere else to go. So it's not just him looking for his planet for 6 years. He's reached the next step, and now he's got to continue on. It's kind of like when Odo finding out the founders were in charge of the Dominion. Like that wasn't the end of that story. It was just a different story from there on out.
Yeah, totally.
That's a good point, because is Dahl a weapon? What is he? Was he meant to be a super soldier? What is the deal?
I don't know. I mean, the security on that Federation relay flagged him. Maybe it just realized that he was genetically engineered, and that's against the law. But
maybe the Federation knew about this particular genetic engineering because he was a weapon of some sort.
There could be purple super soldiers out there somewhere.
Well, the guy, in addition to all his physical powers, he also has telepathy, so that's kind of scary.
Mm-hmm.
He could be really dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, there could be an army of these guys out there running havoc. Who knows?
And that was something he had with just like the generic implant before he like superpowered himself.
Yeah, before he juiced it up even more.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, my wife came into the room late, and when she came into the room, he was growing a mustache and a beard. She goes, "What in the heck?" And we just died laughing because it was funny if I did. Then the slime started coming out of him.
Matt says, I like the way the show doesn't take forever to move along the main story, answering questions while asking new ones.
Agreed.
I agree with that.
I feel like this show is paced really well.
Agreed. Yeah. Because we were all thinking that these mysteries were going to go on for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And they're not doing that. And that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that's good, because when you bank your whole show around these mysteries that go 4 or 5 years, and then the payoff sucks, and then you just sort of spoiled the show. We've seen that happen with other TV shows before. I mean, I think this is the smarter way to do it. You get to an answer, you work to the next answer. You build the story.
Right.
I think that works
Exactly.
much better.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of which, we had Ensign Essentia. We had some revelations today.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, who
That
saw
was cool.
that coming?
Well, I did notice they did have her. She kept giving odd looks a couple of times, and I didn't know what that was about.
Yeah, she was in that Illuminati leak that from like a year and a half ago, was the ensign who's hiding her Val-Nakot nature to hunt for the ship. And so I've just not mentioned that on the show because it's too spoilery.
Thank you.
Well,
But
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but
same here.
yeah. But so we've reached the end of what the information. I went back and looked at it again just this week. The alien geneticist was in it, and the character breakdown, and then this Ensign Essentia revelation, and that was all the info they had that we haven't already seen. So I don't have any more of those. But and plus, I mean, they had Jamila playing it with an American accent, so I've been waiting for her to flip, so it was a cool revelation. It just so happens it's the same time they introduced those things on their neck, and she has one too, but to reveal that she's actually a Val-Nakot, and her coffee table is a dreadnought.
Exactly.
Dreadnought. Yeah,
exactly. So we've been seeing his name in the credits for weeks now, so it's nice to know that he has actually been there this whole time. We just didn't know where or who he was.
Right.
He was a coffee table.
Yeah, I feel like Starfleet security needs to ramp up a little bit. You're sneaking alien robot killers on his disguised as coffee tables.
Yeah.
There's probably something that he does that shields him from scans or something.
I hope so. Or it could just be like those crates that they were beaming up in the episode we were talking about earlier that I just blanked on the title of, that had Simon Van Gelder just hiding in the crate when they beamed it up.
Right.
Dagger of the mind.
Dagger of the mind. There's no screening process. You just hit send.
So what was the point where she has the button in the back of her neck and Dahl has the button in the back of his neck? What was how are those both having that? And she's from the future.
Yeah, I think that's just the technology that she's using to hide. She's like genetically hiding herself as a Trill.
Oh, I got it.
And then she hits the button and turns back into a Val-Nakot. That's what I took from it.
Yeah,
Totally.
Totally.
Yeah, I think it's just coincidence. I mean, it's storytelling, but coincidence in universe that he happened to stumble across that the same week that hers was revealed to us, the audience.
Yes.
Or it could be that Dr. Jago is involved with the Val-Nakot at some point in the future.
Yeah,
I would think so. I would think so. Like they rope her into
Yeah.
I think so. Let's talk about Romulans.
Yeah, the Romulans
Dude.
I loved that they were very like their weapons were like the Romulan weapons from Picard, from the shock troopers that were chasing Picard around. They had the same guns and the same handguns. Very similar to those dudes that were chasing Dodge around in the beginning of Picard.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But man, their uniforms looked so cool.
They really did. They were way
cool.
cooler uniforms.
Oh,
Yeah, like they just like turn their helmet on and just like dive off the platform.
Yeah.
Like, we ain't got time for an elevator. We're jumping.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Right.
Oh man,
I thought they were
so
very cool.
So is that it for Romulans?
I don't know.
Do you think they'll be making a recurrence in this series?
I think we'll see them again because they already modeled the ships and everything. So you may as well.
Well, that's true.
Reusing resources to have them turn back up.
That's true.
I don't know that it'll be next week.
No.
Yeah. Is the protostar still in the neutral zone? I forget. Was at the end? Was it still in the neutral zone or in their space?
I'm not sure.
I think it was still in the neutral zone. I don't remember them leaving.
So that means we may still have some more Romulans coming.
It's possible.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
Even though the Romulans shouldn't be in the neutral zone.
No.
That's true.
They fly into the neutral zone to get onto the Federation for being near it. Like you're in the neutral zone.
Right.
Right.
So we also have a continuation of the what is it? That's not it. Murph's change.
Transmutation?
Yeah.
Transmutation?
Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis. That's it.
Mutation.
Elaine says that she loves that Murph now has more of a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Not just like flopping around and being cute.
Yeah. Well, even before though, he was accidentally firing phasers and things, even when he was a blob.
Right.
He was accidentally helping out in certain ways. So yeah, I like that they're continuing to evolve the Murph thing. I don't like him as well as with arms and legs. I liked him better as a blob, but we'll see what happens,
Yeah, me too.
So question, what did we think about, did we agree with Buddy's ordering of Janeway under no circumstances enter the neutral zone and blow the ship up instead?
Buddy?
Yeah.
The return of Admiral Jellicoe.
I know.
Jellicoe, come on.
Can't just skip over that.
And did we like his portrayal? Did that seem like it made use of him or caricature him?
Well, I thought it was for what it was. I thought it was good. I mean, it was basically just Admiral on the screen for a minute.
Yeah.
But
I think there's more of him coming than just that.
Me too.
And I think if you're going to just have an Admiral on the screen, why not make it someone we're familiar with?
Totally.
I think in all the track history, the other one that could have been Admiral Nechayev, because she used to always show up and bust Picard and Cisco's, every now and then.
Yeah.
Did you notice when Janeway was arguing with Jellicoe how he stressed the word vice when he called her vice admiral because he's a full admiral? I thought that was awesome.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's got 4 Admiral Pips and she has 3.
Exactly. I mean, come on. Matt says, watching the show in the order that we are, I had to explain that Lieutenant Essentia was apparently a Trill, not the same race as Princess Kaitama from the last episode of Enterprise we watched. I don't remember which one that is.
Yeah, the makeups get a little repetitive if you watch a lot of Star Trek. They have only so many ways you can turn somebody into an alien.
I think that might be the one where Trip got stranded on a shuttle with a really haughty, arrogant princess, and he had to learn to. They had to learn to get along.
Yeah.
I think that might be the episode that they're talking about.
Yeah, could be.
Okay. Well, we also got a little more of Okana this week, and it looks like he's gone now for now. Maybe he'll come back.
I hope so. That's disappointing that he jumped ship.
He just
left.
Yeah.
But not a surprise, is it?
No,
not a surprise. He's sort of the bargain brand Han Solo,
Yeah.
Right.
And I like that he was first a Starfleet admiral, now a Romulan shock troops. Who are you guys?
Yeah.
I like that Janeway says the same thing later. They fought off the Romulans. She's like, who are these kids?
Right.
Yeah.
I do like that. They keep impressing. Okay, so on that note, so we mentioned a new role for Murph on the show. I love that frees up Rock to step fully into that science role, and that she was so excited to make her first science log. I loved that.
That was adorable.
What a great moment.
Yeah.
And she's my favorite character on the show. I don't know why, but I just adore her.
She's
Yes.
great, and the girl who plays her does a great job.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she's just like just a heartwarming character. I like when she's like she sees the little dog
The
things
puppy
in
things,
the-
yeah.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it's a good
episode.
episode. Hey,
Yeah.
Jinx.
You owe me a Coke
Right.
or some
Do we?
Star Trek
Question.
wine.
Jellicoe mentioned Janeway's personal feelings for Chakotay. Is there any reason to plan to think that's anything other than the fact that they're friends and colleagues who served together for a long
The entirety
time?
of Twitter thinks this because they're more than friends. So
Ah.
Why can't it
So,
just be
yes.
loyalty to somebody they've known each other for 20 years?
because people have been
Went through-
shipping Janeway and Chakotay for 30 years.
Yeah, but
They actually have. And you know what,
Come
Alan? As I said, I've been listening to the Delta Flyers, the podcast with Garrett Wong and Robert Duncan McNeil. And dude, every week almost they call out subtleties that Kate Mulgrew did that showed she had affection for Chakotay. This little ways like she'd get in his face and kind of sweet talk him, and she kind of touch his cheek. And it's like Charles says, people have been wanting them to get together. I actually wanted them to get together too, but I thought it was natural and could have been natural with the way Chakotay. This is me reading what's more off the page than on the page because Chakotay wasn't used that well. But I could see them getting together. But I just wondered when he said your personal feelings, was that just colleagues or was that more?
Yeah. I mean, you could say the same thing for any captain and first
Any.
officer and former first
Right.
officer, right?
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's
Yeah.
also that episode where they were stranded on that planet that got pretty steamy. So, I mean,
Yeah, but that was so long ago. Why does that
it wasn't that long ago for them, for the characters.
Well,
They're
it
back in time
was.
from us.
I mean,
It was probably
Unless they-
7 years ago for them.
Because
that's a long
here's the
time.
thing: once they got back to Earth, we don't know how they were dating. Because if you remember, he and Seven were dating just before they got back to Earth.
That's right. Chopping vegetables together and everything.
So maybe they
Wow.
broke up and he got with Janeway because her love Mark married somebody about 4 years after she left. She was
Right.
listed as disappeared.
Oh, Lord. Well, I hope not. I don't see that as being necessary. I mean, I hate to call it a kids show because it's certainly on a different level than just being a kids show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't see I just don't see that adding anything to the storyline.
I think
Yeah.
if you think that Janeway and Chakotay are secretly in love, then it works. And if you think they're not, it still works because
Yeah.
she was he was her right-hand man for 7
Yeah.
years while they were lost in the Delta Quadrant. So
Yeah.
Right.
either way, I think it works. So I think it's open
That's
to
true.
interpretation until they do something on the show with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So any more closing thoughts about that before we move on?
Well, you usually ask every week, Charles, what do we want to see next week or what do we want to
Okay.
see to come? So what do we want to see, Alan? I think more Jellicoe for you, maybe?
Oh well,
And
but that's just a add-on. That's just gravy. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing some of the other admirals either. Let's see what Nechayev is up to now.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Any of those people, Admiral Ross from DS9. Let's see him chime in once in a while. But
Yeah.
that's not what I'm hoping to get out of the show. I'm really excited to see now where this Essentia plot line is
Mhm.
going.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how Rock continues to grow. I'm a little intrigued about where they're going to take this Murph situation, but overall, I'm just super excited for however long they decide to draw out this thing of the kids and Janeway being separate, and prolonging that final meeting where they can explain to her it's this weapon, that's what we're trying to protect you from. As long as they do it in an interesting and continuously engaging way, I'm fine with it. But
Yeah.
I can't wait for that moment.
And
Me
hopefully
too.
it's not a string of them meeting Janeway and not saying anything about it.
Exactly.
God,
Yeah, that only works once.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Only one time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Same here. I'm
Well,
really
and-
looking forward to Chakotay coming
Okay.
sooner or
We
later.
know.
Awesome.
You've mentioned
Yeah, I
that
look
a
forward.
time or
I
two.
look forward to more Chakotay too, because we've talked about it on the show before. He was not as well served on Voyager as he could have been. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to him getting some meaty material here.
Totally agreed.
Okay. And now we've got a little bit of announcement. We have an Earth Station Trek hotline.
Yeah.
Where we want to beef up our little question of the week and comments and things like that. So if you have any questions or comments for us and you'd like to hear yourself on the show, we have a phone number that you can dial, and it's easy to remember. 307-387-1701 is the Earth Station Trek hotline. That's 307-387-1701. And
Clever.
You'll hear Veronica's voice, a little funny voice message, and we'll change those up from time to time. So that's the only way to hear the little voice message will be to call the number and leave us a voicemail. We'll have it on the show. We can answer your questions and play your comments, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. You know, it's we've really enjoyed the feedback that we get via like text and so forth, but I think it'd be fun to have some more voices. And I think it's fun to have a hotline. I mean, we need a little jingle like they used to do. They would sing the hotline, and so you remember it for the rest of your life.
Right.
But, you know, for now, 307-387-1701. And you can leave us a voicemail, and we'd love to hear them, and we'd love to play them and respond to them on the show.
307-387-1701. There you go. Done.
Perfect.
We'll let our music guy figure that out.
That's going to be our new ESO promo.
Hey, Elena's on board. She says that's a sweet idea.
Good. Someone
yeah,
call
man.
it this week so we can see if it works.
Yeah.
Right. We have to have a test drive.
Right. So whoever wants to be first, let us know. And just call it.
Yeah.
Okay. I will.
Do it.
All right. All right, Alan, where can people find more of you?
Go to cosmicpress.com, KOZMICpress.com, and there you can look at all the books that I've written and the books that I've published from other authors and see a list of all the podcasts that I'm involved in.
It's a long list.
Yeah.
And how about you, Keith?
You can find me on the standard social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
And how about us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
Or?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
And do you have a closing for us this week?
I was thinking about that earlier, and I didn't come up with one. And I've been thinking about it, and then I forgot about it until you said something.
You want to sing the phone number again then?
Okay, yeah. 307-387-1701.
Perfect.
Oh, that's funny. All right, everybody have a great week. See you next time.